Streaming live, this is NewsNation Now.
And a good Thursday morning to you. Welcome into NewsNation Now. I am Aaron Nolan. Each and every Thursday, we like to go to Washington, D.C. to kind of get the pulse of what is happening in the nation's capital. Joining me, as always, on this Thursday morning, Kellie Meyer, a Washington, D.C. correspondent for us here at NewsNation. Kellie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, as always.
Kellie, one thing we joke about each and every week, there's never a dull moment on Capitol Hill, and this week is no exception. And one thing that everyone is focused on right now, at least what I've watched on Twitter, on social media, is the stimulus check. Everybody talking about that new hot word, the stimmy.
Exactly. And, you know, it was interesting to see as soon as he signed the American Rescue Package into law last Thursday, I was doing live shots on Friday night and was hearing from people on Twitter that they were already seeing that deposit show up in their account. So then there was that backlash we saw this week with some banks, some being frustrated with banks for, not getting the check deposited as soon as possible. But keep an eye out for those. I know another batch went in yesterday on St. Patrick's Day, so keep an eye out for more money coming in for sure.
$1,400 going to individuals across the country. Obviously, Kellie, that's a big deal. Talk a little bit, if you can, about how much it will help small businesses around the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think what the Biden administration is saying is just, and what they're touting on their tour this week. He's visiting small businesses himself. Vice President Harris was visiting small businesses, I believe, in Denver this week as well. Just saying how much this is going to, how much money, billions of dollars going into small businesses themselves. And then for the workers, the stimulus check to help them kind of get through this end of the pandemic. And then that ties with their push on vaccinations to make sure everybody's vaccinated, to get this herd immunity, to get everybody back to work.
Well, and that is one thing as we continue to look at the life cycle of what this COVID-19 pandemic has done to America and really the entire world. Not only are there now 3 stimulus checks that are going out to Americans, there's a vaccination in place. The president coming out last week saying he believes that July 4th is now a holiday that most Americans will be vaccinated for, and the semblance of normalcy, and I know that's kind of a word we just kind of throw around right now, but it could be returning to normal by the middle of summer. A lot of expectations on that, but it seems like right now the vaccination policy continues to chug along, and most Americans could get that vaccination by summer.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for an announcement from President Biden this afternoon. We're going to be watching around 3:15 Eastern. He's going to be coming out and giving a speech about the vaccination specifically. So we're waiting to hear if there might be a new update on that. They're saying that, there's going to be mass vaccinations happening in the month of April. You could maybe see everybody vaccinated even sooner. It's interesting with politicians setting a deadline for things, because then they could always, be held to that and have to go back on their word. And this is such a situation that is so fluid and changing. And, you might see spikes with more people going out with the warmer weather. It's just so hard to track. So I think they're being hesitant on, or giving themselves some leeway on, this timeline, but it could be sooner. And so we might hear something new from them at the White House this afternoon.
One other thing that we're hearing a lot of right now, looking at your screen right now, is immigration and this migrant children. There was a discussion yesterday with Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, about whether or not these children should cross the border or go back to their parents. Where are we right now with this administration's policy regarding what's happening at the U.S.-Mexico border?
This is a big moment for the Biden administration to see how they handle this. They've been getting peppered with questions on the crisis at the border, or if they label it a crisis or a situation, or I think Secretary Mayorkas called it a difficult situation the other day. Republicans calling it a crisis, Democrats not so much calling it a crisis yet. Some are. I believe West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin did call it a crisis as well. But I think they have to decide what their policy is going to be coming forward, and if Congress will join them on some immigration reform. You might hear from more on that today. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is going to have a press briefing here shortly. She might discuss some of the immigration steps that they're taking there in Congress to work with President Biden on, trying to handle what's happening there and make sure that especially the kids are taken care of, or treated with respect and fairly, instead of, potentially being thrown back into a difficult situation back home, or how they're going to handle this. But it is definitely a situation they have to handle with care. And I don't believe they're going to hear the end of this for a long time. I know reporters are fighting to make sure they get down there with them to cover this, to cover some of the border facilities and that sort of thing. So we'll see, what happens next.
Kellie, I know you've told me that you've been watching what is going on the Hill right now in the House when it comes to Asian Americans and the hate crimes that have gone on. We saw this week 8 people losing their lives at massage parlors in Atlanta. How is Washington responding to the crimes against Asian Americans?
Yeah, I was listening into that hearing this morning. It's happening in the House, and they're discussing discrimination and violence against Asian Americans. I believe it was set up even before the shooting had happened in Atlanta this week, but especially coming on the heels of that as well. And for some Democrats, what they were focusing on, at least what I was hearing in the opening statements, was that words matter. And they feel that some of the language that former President Trump used during his presidency, during his stints on the campaign trail, calling the China virus, built up this hate toward Asian Americans in different communities across the country. When Republicans were brought up to speak, they felt as though, they don't want this to be a conversation of impinging or hampering on free speech, but rather discussing the violence that Asian Americans are facing. And Democrats are trying to say that these two tied together, again, with the words matter. So it's a very interesting conversation. If anybody has the chance to tune in, these hearings are very interesting and fascinating and powerful. So that's going to be going on here for at least another hour or two here on Capitol Hill. And then just what steps they take to try to lower the temperature, as well as just, make sure that these kind of acts of violence stop happening.
Well, and you can watch that right now here on NewsNationNow.com. We are streaming that hearing across our platforms. Kellie, what are you working on today for our stations all across the country?
So I will be doing some live shots coming up here for stations across the country this evening, and we are going to be following President Biden's speech. I'm really curious to see what new news comes out of that today for people to understand what's happening with vaccinations. So I'll be watching that closely. So catch our live shots, or on Twitter, I'll be tweeting about what's happening during that address. But again, we'll keep following any updates on the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as those stimulus checks, to make sure everybody's getting theirs. But I will be keeping an eye on this hearing as well, to see what's next, as I cover the Southeast as well, and what's happening in Georgia.
We covered this this weekend on News Nation. The press conference with the president. Will the president be speaking in front of reporters anytime soon? And did the reports that we have done and other media outlets, did that get the president or maybe to make that schedule, maybe to get in front of reporters?
I think so. I think with Press Secretary Jen Psaki being peppered with questions at the White House briefings on when President Biden would be coming in front of them rather than her to address them, really moved this along, because she was asked that question, I think, every single press briefing from the reporters in the briefing room. And they decided that next week, I believe it's going to be next Thursday, President Biden will hold his first formal press conference with reporters. Now, I know we discussed here, I believe, he can walk to Marine One and stop and talk with reporters, or, be at a pre-scheduled address and reporters can shout questions. But generally, you're being shuffled out of the room. Generally, you can't hear over Marine One when you're trying to ask him questions. He can't hear you, so it's you can't hear his answer, that kind of thing. So this will be a very helpful setting to hear from the president firsthand and reporters asking him. So if you have any questions that you have, please feel free to let us know, and hopefully we'll be getting a seat in that room. Fingers crossed.
Kellie, before you go, one final question to you. You mentioned that you cover the southeast part of the United States at our Washington, D.C. bureau. Yesterday was a very messy day when we talk about severe storms for the southeast part of our country. Have you heard from lawmakers yet? And as storms continue to move their way towards the east, we could see more storms today. Obviously, helping those people who have lost homes has to be at the forefront of some of the politicians you cover.
Yeah, absolutely. And that tied with just being in a pandemic as well. So I know we've looked at what happened during, hurricane season. If you lose your home and you're in a shelter, but then you have to socially distance, is there enough space? I'm sure this is something that lawmakers are going to be asked about when any kind of severe weather comes up. Generally, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are very quick to act, as well as whoever's in the White House and whoever is at FEMA. So I would say, keep an eye out for any kind of assistance that's going to be coming out here from the federal government. They are generally very quick to act or declare a disaster declaration, that kind of thing. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that. I know we were in live shots last night, and I think everybody across the country was dealing with some sort of severe weather. So we're definitely thinking of everybody out there who is facing that.
Kellie Meyer reporting for us out of Washington, D.C. Kellie, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
And we will have much more coming up today on NewsNationNow.com and this NewsNation Facebook page. We encourage you also to join us tonight on NewsNation. If you don't know about our brand new network, we're unbiased. We're right down the middle. We're not going to steer you to the left or the right. We're going to give you this information and let you decide how you feel about the news. We get things started today at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock Central with Early Edition. Then we have 6 o'clock is the Donlin Report. 7 to 9, Rob and Marnie will be on NewsNation Prime. And then Ashley Banfield talks to newsmakers on Banfield starting at 9 o'clock Central Time. That's all we've got right now. We'll be back with news as it happens here at NewsNation. I'm Aaron Nolan. Have a great morning.